last long run, about 12 miles into a 24-mile run, I started having pain in my left knee. And it felt like somebody was playing around with a butter knife inside my knee joint. So I got 12 miles out, and it was an out and back closed trail. So I had to walk 12 miles back to the cars.
Welcome back. It is September, and we are talking about pain and everything we can do. What is pain? How can we help pain? But before we get started, Dr. Jess, what is in your glass today?
So today I have moved on from my coffee to some ginger lemon kombucha. It's actually really good. I'm digging the ginger. It's very gingery. And that way, get hydrated, get some probiotics. I mean, what's not to love? Some anti-inflammatories. So, Dr. Bobbie, what's in your glass?
I am still on some decaf coffee.
I like it. And today we have a special guest with us. His name is Scott. Scott, before we go through the intros, what's in your glass?
So, of course, started early this morning with plenty of coffee, little electrolyte mix after my run this morning, but now I'm on to water with lime. And I'll go through 3 or 4 of these throughout the day.
Yeah, perfect. It is hot here in Florida. Scott is in Florida, and you just gotta keep drinking. It is so hot right now. So, Scott, obviously the month of pain, you were somebody that I thought of that would be great to talk to because of the experiences that you've had. And so before we kind of get into those experiences, first, just tell us a little bit about you. Like, who are you?
Well, obviously I'm Scott, husband, father, adventure sports junkie. As my son was growing up, we did a lot of mountain biking, rock climbing, whitewater kayaking. I got into bicycle racing and mountain bike racing. And as soon as I moved to Florida, I had, one goal, which was to learn to surf, and spent the last 4 years diving into that world. And I'm now at the point that if I could only do one sport, that would be the one for me. Everything's got to support that. Even now, my running is really designed to give me the endurance to be able to continue paddling out.
Right. Yep. I love that. So, so tell me a little bit about like your experience, like way back when you were really having some difficulty with pain, and kind of how that first experience went for you.
So back in 2001, group of friends and I were all training for the 10th anniversary Disney marathon. I'd never run a marathon before. We found a program. Funny enough, it was one of Jeff Galloway's early programs on preparing for a race. We all started training together, was having a great time with it, became addicted to running, couldn't stand not going, and was really having a great time. We were about a month out from the race. We were doing our last long run before the taper, where we started easing back, getting ready to have enough energy. Last long run, about 12 miles into a 24-mile run, I started having pain in my left knee, and it felt like somebody was playing around with a butter knife inside my knee joint. So I got 12 miles out, and it was an out and back closed trail. So I had to walk 12 miles back to the cars. All the wives had surprised everybody to show up and celebrate us. And everybody's going, "Where's Scott? Where's Scott?" And they couldn't just come pick me up. There was nowhere to come find me. They had to wait for me to make my way back. And I was an hour late back to the cars. Long and short of it, I missed the race, couldn't run. Managed to come back for about 6 months, and then the pain returned, and just couldn't run. It was too painful. It was not fun. It was heartbreaking, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think like that's a big part of what happens with pain is that we have these roles that we fulfill in our lives, and these identities that we have, and our identity of being an active and healthy person gets challenged when something happens. And we have to work through it. And then when it recurs, now that starts to affect our belief system of sense of self, right? Am I going to be able to be active long term? Am I going to be able to fulfill these roles? And so really making sure that we're having good management solutions from a healthcare perspective is really important when we're working with individuals in pain, because it's more than just pain. It's not as simple as like, oh, it hurts there, we just need to get that better. There's so much in the person's life that gets affected by that pain, that is especially persistent pain. So during that time, what was done in order to be able to help you with your knee?
So of course, scheduled a visit with the doctor. GP sent me to a specialist. I ended up at an orthopedic, and they did x-rays, MRIs, lots of testing. About 6 months in, the orthopedic doctor finally just said, look, I don't know what's wrong. I could do exploratory surgery, but I don't think your insurance will pay for it. And I don't know that I'll find anything. So you can either pursue that or you can quit running. So I quit running. And Julie gave me a hard time. Every time we would be driving and pass a runner, I would start to pout and, mumble under my breath. And she's like, look, you need to do something. Of course, that's when I proceeded to get into cycling. I could do that and it didn't hurt as long as I didn't bounce off the ground.
Right. There's that. But what about like hiking and stuff like that? Would the knee ever bother you with that?
Early on, I could continue to hike. We did a lot of backpacking and didn't have any trouble for years. And then it got to the point where I couldn't even do that. Just the added weight of a full pack and being up and down over rocks and scrambling, it was misery. So I finally ended up having to give that up as well. The only thing I could do was ride a bike.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is what I hear all the time. This is a common story that I hear, is that something happened, imaging was negative, therefore nobody can explain it to you. Therefore, the next bit of advice is stop being active.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
that's
but why? Why did the pain start and why did it persist? Like, answer the why. If the imaging doesn't answer it, like, recommend something else, And so that's the part that just like drives me nuts sometimes when I'm hearing these stories, because it was there for a reason. Clearly it was there with running, which is loaded kinetic chain, right? So as your leg is hitting the ground, there's an equal and opposite reaction that happens. So if we don't address the why, just decreasing the loading isn't going to solve it long term, which is what we saw, right?
Yep.
So then it started affecting you even with your hiking. It took years, but that same exact pain started up again because it was never resolved. The causative factors were never discovered in the first place. And so your whole like sense of like what you're capable of doing was impacted by essentially not having good diagnostics. It's crazy, right? So like you've got to get down to the good diagnostics, not you, like our healthcare system. This needs to get to better diagnostics when the imaging is negative. So that being said, so now fast forward. So how many years went by before you and I met?
It was 20 years.
Yeah.
And my wife started visiting you for some hip and shoulder issues. And of course, she's talking about the wonderful change that she was beginning to see. And she had mentioned my situation to you and, tell him to come in. I'll get him running again.
Yeah.
Of course, my reaction was, yeah, right. I've been told that before.
Yeah.
Chiropractor told me that. This person told me that. Like, I'll give it a try. What can it hurt?
Right. So, and I think that's the number one thing is like, just making sure that if we don't have, and that's what I do in an evaluation, is I make sure that we test for the red flags, which your imaging had already cleared red flags, but I'm still going to do differential diagnosis, which just means I'm going to like kind of go through all the potential diagnoses that make sense for how this is presenting and make sure that all of what we need is intact. So if you were like missing some component pieces, then no, obviously like running's not the best answer for you in the long term. But if we have all of our component pieces, it's just a matter of cleaning up the biomechanics. And that's essentially, right, what we did.
Oh,
And,
absolutely.
but it wasn't this like straight linear shot, right?
No,
Right.
not even close.
Right. And that's normal. We had 20 years of your body learning a certain holding pattern, and we challenged that holding pattern. And so we would progressively load just to the point where it's like, I think we can do this. We might have a little setback, but it shouldn't like blow up or anything. And that's kind of how we know essentially what's too much and what's underloading. And so when we go into that process of challenging the biomechanics and challenging the tissue to like really retrain, there's some patience there. So yeah. So about how long, do you remember how long did it take before you were able to actually get back to maybe like that first 5K distance?
I'd say it was probably 8 weeks of therapy and training before it's like, okay, it's time to go try.
Right.
And figure, okay, I can run a mile, and we'll start there.
Yep.
Managed to do it, no pain, a couple of days later, do it again, and that progressed over a couple of months. I think the first time I made a 5K distance was probably 4 months into,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
all the
the way
therapy.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds about right. And I think that's a more normative progression. So sometimes the expectation is my knee is hurting, I want it to stop, and I want to run a 5K. Okay, well, I mean, that's great. You can want that. But when we're coming about it from a way where we're actually fixing the cause and not just addressing the symptom, the real answer is that's probably not how the progression is going to go. And so the real answer is we've got to clean up a lot of stuff and then make sure that the body doesn't go right back into that holding pattern, which means we can't overstress it. So we can't understress, we can't overstress. And so then the body can continue to heal and load without going back into the bad habits. And if we do go into the bad habits, we got to address that real quick to break that pattern. And so that's like a very different way of looking at orthopedic pain. Because normally, right, we get an injection, we take medication, we put some ice on it, stretch, and we keep going. But why did the pain happen? The lightning bolt didn't strike you out of the sky, right? And then just like boom, like blow up your knee. There was a holding pattern that was developing, and it didn't hurt until it did, right? So this was building when you were training for that marathon. And so all of that holding pattern started, and then it became symptomatic. So typically this had been starting way, way before you ever felt those symptoms. And so the whole point of this episode is to kind of challenge thinking. So if you're somebody that wants to get back to an active lifestyle, has had negative imaging, or even imaging that doesn't really make sense, like this doesn't really explain my pain, like I feel like I could probably do more than I'm being told I could do, then that's when it's like really trying to like decide, maybe I can look at this from a different angle and talk to somebody that can do what we call good differential diagnosis and find out why is this going on. So it's a lot different than if you like, fall, boom, I have acute pain, MRI shows, medial meniscal tear. Okay, that's a different scenario, right? There's an acute onset, there's a causative factor, and the imaging is positive. What I'm talking about is there was no real mechanism of injury. It just kind of built up over time, and then all of a sudden it was there. Imaging is negative, and all they're doing is telling me to stop being active. That, like, are you seeing like the missing pieces
That's
there?
one of my biggest pet peeves with especially active people or athletes is like they have an injury, they're like, okay, you have to stop. And it's like my biggest thing, I work with gymnasts, and my biggest thing is like, no, you're not going to stop because we're going to cause problems down the road, if we stop. But what can we modify? Right. What, during that time of figuring out, I still need you in the gym and even for their mental, their psychological aspect. It's huge for them to be in the gym and do as much as they can and still feel like they're doing their sport, they're doing something they love. Or for example, running, you said just being able to get back out. Well, maybe I can't do 10 miles right now, but I am allowed to do a mile, like in, just modifying it through there.
Yeah. I think maintaining the control is really important for the individual of like, I am able to do this. And so no matter what, like the only time I'll tell an athlete to like, hey, just let's not right now, like let's just not, is if something's unstable and we could actually tear something that's like that's unstable, or we've got some sort of like neurologic stuff that's like red flaggy, then yeah, we need to just pause for a minute and like clear our red flags and then go on. But if there's no red flags and you just like, it hurts a little bit on the outside of your knee, I mean, not a little bit, a sharp pain, no, we're gonna keep going. Like modify, decrease, do as much as we can to right up to the point of where we start getting painful, and then we give it a break. But we've got to get right up to that point and so that we can constantly bump that higher and higher and higher. Otherwise, we're always going to be undershooting or overshooting. So if we overshoot and do too much, we're going to like that inflammatory process is just going to happen all over again, which I see that oftentimes where, someone sprains their ankle and then, it's 5 weeks later and they're still really swollen. And it's like, well, you're kind of stuck in that subacute phase because you're constantly doing too much. So there's that constant battle of not doing too much, but not doing too little, and working with somebody that can help guide you along the way to add specificity for treating cause and pushing function is key. And that's what physical therapy does. It comes about it from a very different perspective than just a typical Western approach where it's like, imaging into, stuff to treat the symptoms oftentimes, unless there's surgery that's involved. So Scott, tell me about the rest of your progression. So you got back to your 5K, right? And that was fun. Okay.
Yep.
And then I remember this because it was October, right?
Yeah.
And I needed to
some
go get the
crazy
car.
person suggests, oh, why don't we sign up and we can run the Donna half marathon together?
Yeah.
Like, no, why would I want to do that? That's just painful. Mentally, that's just painful.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely mentally painful. So the backstory is I was doing this. We had this group event where a bunch of individuals that were associated with the clinic, we went out to this, it was a Galloway like kickoff for the Donna Marathon training. And so it was a 5K. And we had a group of individuals that were walking, and we were just trying to get everybody like out and moving and enjoying what it feels like to do a little bit of distance, which is, that 5K distance. But we had to get the car. There was someone that was potentially not going to make it all the way back. So I jogged back to get the car and I was like, hey, Scott, you want to jog with me? He was like, sure. And then as we were jogging, I was like, hey, so I'm going to train for this race. Like, you should train too.
I didn't realize I was being set up at the time.
A little bit. Yeah, there's a little bit of a setup there. Yeah.
A little bit.
But that was challenging your belief system, right?
It was.
So like I had you right there where you were like really understanding I can do this. Like I can be a runner again. And it's like I could see it, but I needed you to see it. And so whether it's like you don't have to run a half marathon to enjoy running. It's just it's fun to have that proof that like I am able to do it. And when you get that, it's like super exciting. And then you realize I have no reason why I can't continue to run long term. So yeah. So now, right? Did the half?
We did the half, and part of the not only did I finish, it was 21 years later, and over the course of that 21 years, I only lost 22 minutes off my personal best at that distance.
Right.
That's awesome. That's impressive.
I was really excited about that.
Yeah. Because the real answer is you had everything you needed that whole time to continue to be a runner. There was nothing that was stopping you other than diagnostics and cleaning up biomechanics. Right. So yeah, that's like the number one thing. Like if you're active and you want to stay active, like don't settle for answers that are inadequate. Like, keep pushing to get the answers that make sense to you, not what you want to hear. Okay, that's different.
Right.
But the answers that make sense, that are based in logic and reason, and not just feel a little flat, you know? Again, I see this on a regular basis when I do evals, mostly with runners. This happens to runners all the time. I don't know, healthcare community just tells runners, like, stop. I've heard this so many times. Like, I'm sorry, like, which runners are dying early of preventable chronic illness? Right? Like, none of them are on medications because they stay active and healthy. Their cardiovascular systems are strong, their musculoskeletal systems are strong, their neurologic systems are good. Like, why are we telling people to stop running? Really? Anyway, doesn't make sense to me, you know? But anyway, that's my side note. So, so the point of the story is, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's also important I think when it comes to healthcare, we're scared to seek second opinions. You know, if the first doctor isn't giving you any answers, you can try a different doctor or therapist, or, you know, like, it's okay if you're going to get a quote on your house to get your siding redone, you're not going to ask one person and just take whatever they say. You're going to ask a few companies to come out and give quotes.
Right.
So I think it's important that we realize we can do that in healthcare as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you like, if it's different, like if your imaging is showing like significant stuff going on at the joint, or tears or instabilities, things like that, that's different. The imaging correlates with the symptoms. So that is causative. It's when you don't have a cause for your symptoms. And it's still like, I don't know, just stop, right? That's just kills me. What? Like, what if we try and find out why? Like, that's because it's not, if it's there and it's underlying, it's affecting running, eventually it's going to affect your walking. That's the real answer. And so don't let that continue to let you bring your level further and further down, because eventually you're going to be the person that doesn't even walk for exercise because the knee hurts so bad. And it's like, it's just unnecessary. So oftentimes unnecessary. So this is our big ending of pain, and showing people that, like, when you actually challenge your belief system and challenge your thinking, and get some good differential diagnosis, like, your pain can improve oftentimes. And how you do that is, it's not just like a matter of not being in pain equals no pain. It's a matter of being guided and pushing your body just enough, and understanding your body and what it's capable of, which means that you have to be part of the solution. So, Scott, like, each thing we did, like, you had to be in control of how much did you push, how much did you run, how much did you stretch, how many times did you do your techniques to kind of address your symptoms. I mean, that was in your hands, not mine.
Oh yeah, it was entirely on me. You gave me the tools, showed me what I needed to do, but if I didn't do it, it didn't help.
Right.
And of course, the whole reason I got into this situation in the first place was because I didn't like to stretch. I didn't like doing the mundane hard stuff. I wanted to go run. That's the fun part.
Yeah.
So, recognizing that, just walking out the door cold, it's not a good plan. I need to loosen up. I need to stretch. Afterwards, I need to make a concerted effort to do all the same again. And that's what keeps me, fluid and able to continue moving.
Right. Yeah. And I think, like, I always try and, like, equate it to, like, when you have your dinner plate. So you might really, really love one aspect on that dinner plate, but it's not going to be a balanced meal unless you have all of it, right? So we have to have our, eating the rainbow. So we don't eat just white or just red. We eat green and yellow and orange, and we eat all of the colors, even if they're not our favorite, because that's how our body is actually going to function at its highest level. So it's the same thing. Like, runners don't like stretching, typically don't love stabilization either. They love running. Lifters love to strengthen, so much on the mobility and stretching side. Gymnasts love to stretch because they like that mobility. So it's like we all have our tendencies for what we like. It's just a matter of like keeping us balanced and filling in the areas that are our weak areas in order to make sure the body's going to function at that highest level. Nope, there's no picture that can tell you that answer. Like you've got to just like make sure you understand your body, where are your weak points, and fill in your gaps, and then boom, that function just starts to come right back up again. So love it. All right, everybody. So next month is October. We're going to get into Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It'll be, a lot of good information. We'll talk to some really cool people. And so stay tuned. We absolutely love shedding some light and getting all sorts of like dialogue going. Thank you for listening to the episode today. If you would like to learn more about how Two Gals can support you, then join our Two Gals Insiders membership, which can be found at www.2-gals.com. Also, don't forget, follow us on social media. We're on Facebook as well as Instagram. Okay, everybody. Bye. Enjoy your week.